Hey guys, how's it going? So today I thought I'd pitch my manual M135 against my automatic M2. So we're starting off with my M135. You might have noticed that I've changed my clothes from the beginning of the video. In fact, it's about 2 weeks after when I started it originally. I've just been so busy with so much going on that I had to sort of abort filming that day and pick it up here. All this YouTube stuff is fun and I love sharing it with you guys. You know, I'm addicted to filming and I'm slowly getting better at it. I'm trying to stop umming and erring. But it's difficult and it doesn't earn me any money, you know. It's a hobby, as I say, so I've got to prioritize my actual job. I know I've squeezed in that i8 video, the Vanquish video, but I was offered those cars and I thought I had to make time to do them, so I did. Whereas this and the M2 are sort of sitting at home or sitting in my garage and can be filmed at any point. So we're starting in my M135. For those of you that are stranger to my channel, you might not know, but to most of you, you all know how much I love these cars, especially the M135, the hatchback. The 235 admittedly is a better car. It's a more sorted car. It's a more sorted chassis. It's a bit more grown up. It drives more like a 4 Series. Is it any more fun than the M135? No, it's not. But it is certainly, I think on a track or on the limit, it feels a bit more comfortable than the M135 does with its shorter wheelbase. I have the M135 because I love the sort of versatility of having the hatchback. I've currently got the seats down the back, as you might or might not be able to see. And I've got the luggage separating net there, which is actually super strong, really solid to stop things like my bike or my bike wheels flying forward. I still have all that tied down though when I'm carrying it, just to stop it moving around and making noise. So yeah, I use this car as it should be used, really. I think that's what's so brilliant about the M135. It is a hatchback. All hatchbacks are practical. The Golf, the 1 Series, the A3, they're very practical shapes, they're very practical cars. This is a hot hatch, so it has the practicalities of a standard hatchback of a normal 1 Series, but it just happens to be slightly hot, or very hot actually, very, very, very quick. That brings me on to the next point. This car's got just over 320 brake horsepower going through the rear wheels in a car that weighs just under 1.5 tons. That's quick. I mean, that's a recipe for a fast car. It'll do 100 miles an hour in just over 10 seconds. It'll do 0 to 60 in just over 4.5 seconds. It's a seriously rapid car. I mean, it's supercar performance sort of 12-15 years ago, but in a hatchback. And my one doesn't have the badging. I can't stand most of the M Performance stuff. I don't mind the grills in the front, but all the sills or whatever, I'm probably a lot older. I'm 36 years old, so I'm probably a lot older than the target audience for this car. But what I love most about it is you take the badges off and it looks just like most other 1 Series, which is brilliant. It's a real wolf in sheep's clothing. Also, the price is quite exceptional. I think it's the best value bang for buck. Certainly the best value bang for buck BMW that's on sale. 31,000 is the list price for a 3-door manual like this one, before options. But really, aside from the adaptive suspension, there's no other options that are going to give you extra performance. Or obviously the limited slip diff, but that's about 2.5 grand. And it's a lot of money to sort of spend on a car that's almost 10% of the value of the car to stick a limited slip diff in. So I think it's a bit far-fetched. And I also think that this car, I haven't driven one with an LSD, so I can't comment, and I know that I know for a fact that an LSD is going to give you a better drive. I'm sure it might even transform this car. I'd love to get my hands on one and try one, so if anyone's got one that I could have a go in, that'd be fantastic. But I really think this car does such a good job without one. It doesn't suffer too badly, except for in sort of wet or very cold and sort of icy conditions. The inside rear wheels, you know, the lighter sort of inside one when you're cornering and stuff, it does tend to spin or lose traction, and the electronics sort of cuts power to sort of yeah, that's how the traction control system works in this car. But it's not an intrusive system, and the rear axle does a very good job at continuing to get the power down in most conditions. So it's not the sort of car you'd think you'd get in and, you know, 320 horsepower through the rear wheels, really, with no LSD, you'd think it would really suffer, but actually it doesn't, only when you're really pushing on. Now that brings me to where this car and the 235 falter compared to an M2. When you're really pushing on, when you're sort of at 9 tenths or 8 or 9 tenths, they become slightly on edge. The rear axle, especially in the M135, the rear end feels a little bit soft. The rear suspension starts running out of travel. It moves around quite a bit, and I wouldn't say it's an eerie feeling. The car is solid. It's a stiff chassis, and you know, with the Michelin Pilot Super Sports, you've got plenty of grip there, and it's fairly predictable, but it's not as sure-footed as you would expect an M car to be. So when you really start pushing on, this car sort of cries enough. It gets up to a certain point. I haven't taken this on a track day, but I can imagine if you're really pushing on a track day, you know, it starts showing signs of its weakness. Whereas the M2, at that point, when you really start to push it, it comes alive. It loves being pushed, you know. So anyway, back to this car. Now, what makes this comparison, I guess you could call it, even more interesting? Well, it's not a comparison, because we're talking about two different price points here. This car's 31 grand, manual, 3-door, without any options. M2, you're looking at 45 grand for a manual one. Then you factor in the discounts you get on the M135s and 235s, which you won't get in the M2, and you know, you're talking close to 20 grand for a like-for-like car spec, you know, gearbox, etc. So 20 grand is a huge price difference. 20 grand is 2/3 of the price of this car. So, you know, it's a massive price difference. Now, to make things even more interesting, BMW have recently announced that they are replacing M135 and the M235 with the M140 and the M240 respectively. Now, those cars, they're going to be pretty much like cosmetically, chassis wise, suspension, everything, brakes, all the same, which is great, because you know, the hardware that's in this car is fantastic as it is. But they're replacing the brilliant N55 engine, which is, you know, which shares much of its internals with and the block, etc., with the M2. They're replacing that N55 with a completely new engine. I think it's called the B58 or something, or is that a bomber? I can't remember. But it's a completely new power plant. It's a 3-litre, 6-cylinder, twin scroll turbo. So same layout, same size, same principle, same amount of cylinders, same turbo, same etc. But it's an all new engine. It's going to be up about 20 brake horsepower. It's going to be about 10% more efficient. So we're talking an auto M140i, for instance, is going to return 40 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. Now, I know those figures are always a little bit sort of optimistic, but I've, you know, got very close to the quoted figures for this car. So, in the real world, you know, on a long journey, I reckon you could achieve 40 mpg in a car that's now going to have nearly 350 horsepower. The tax bracket's lower because it's more efficient, but on top of all the power gains and the sort of lower emissions and more efficiency, on top of all of that, the new engine is going to have identical torque figures to the M2, 369 pound-feet of torque, and a very flat torque curve as well, from a very sort of low rev range up to about 4.5, I think, the maximum torque. Now, why that is so relevant to me and why that excites me about the new M140 and the M240 is, when I jump in my M2, initially it does feel a lot punchier, not more powerful. It feels a lot more punchier. It feels more alive. The engine feels like it's always there. You know, I think it's a combination of a very sensitive throttle setup and the fact that it is a more powerful and torquey engine. But it's the torque that you really feel on the M2. It's that crazy torque, because once you've driven it for a while, you realise that actually it's not much quicker than an M135 or an M235. It's just a lot punchier. It has a lot of mid-range punch all the time. It seems to always be there. It's got that torque overboost function, so it gives you like an extra amount of torque. I think about 400 pound-feet of torque for like a 10-second period or something. So it's still going to have more torque when that overboost function kicks in, but the bottom line is the figures are very similar now between the sort of half M house, the M140 and the M240, and the full fat M2. So that car's available to order now, in fact, from BMW. It's going to cost the list price, the retail list price is the same, so you can effectively buy a manual one of those for 31, a manual 3-door for 31 grand. I think that will be the deal of the century, because I think this car is currently, and that one's certainly going to be, you know, better. So that's going to make the gap between the cars much smaller in terms of performance, but the price difference is still going to stay the same. So it's going to make these sort of halfway M cars massively good value, and yeah, it's going to make decisions for people really, you know, it's tough. But anyway, so moving back to this, you know, this hatchback, this M135, what do I love about it? I love the fact that, you know, I've been driving around in this car, talking for what, 10 minutes, just relaxing, enjoying it. It's a manual, but it hasn't, you know, it hasn't been hard work. It's just been it's a pretty good manual gearbox. It's not as good as something like in Will's John Cooper Works Mini, which is just exceptional, but it's not bad. It's a good gearbox. It's freed up in the 5,000 miles I've had it. It was very notchy to begin with, but it's solid, it's meaty, you know, it feels like it's, you know, you can slam it in the gears when it's warm, and when you're pushing on. The clutch is heavy, but it feels like there's a lot of strength in there, especially when you're sort of dumping it out of second and third gears. It just bites, and it's a great fitting clutch. All the pedals are good. I've got fairly big and fat feet, so I've got the narrowest shoe. Whenever I take this car out for a proper drive, I put some really narrow shoes on. I try to avoid wearing specific driving shoes because you might look like a little bit of a penis. And you know, it's very easy, well, it's reasonably easy to do sort of heel and toe in this car because the pedal box is quite small, but pedals are nice and close together. Steering's good, steering wheel, everything about it. But you just forget, you know, I've been driving around in comfort with my adaptive suspension, so it's a comfortable ride. Engine's just, I can just about hear that 6-cylinder purring away, but not much. And then when I decide to push on, we're coming up to a nice bit of road here, de-restricted as well. So I'll put it into sports now. Okay, so it stiffens up automatically. There we go. And then I push on, and the sound, and suddenly I'm like, holy shit, I'm in a fast car. I mean, instantly. And the handling, the steering, it gets heavier, which I wish it kind of wouldn't do, or it wouldn't. I think that's the same with all BMWs. When you put it in sports, the steering gets heavier. I think it's heavy enough in comfort as it is, and I know you can change certain things within the sort of configurator, but I think the fakeness of making it so heavy, it's like, well, you know, why? Why does the steering need to get so heavy all of a sudden when you put it in sports? It's nice to have a bit of weight there, but I think the comfort setting in all BMWs is enough weight. But otherwise, it's just, you know, it turns into an animal. It turns from a very relaxing, everyday tool into an absolute animal. I'm just letting a bit of a gap build between me and the grandma in front. But yeah, it's just, you know, let's put it into second here. Nice bit of road coming down here. So yeah, foot on the floor. The road's a little bit damp coming here. See the back end let go a little bit there. And again, just on the wet tarmac there. If I was in the M2, the back end, in fact, if I was in the M2 doing that there, the back end would have slid around a bit and I'd have got a little bit sideways. In this, you can just feel the inside wheel at the back picking up and spinning, but you don't necessarily lose much sort of momentum. It does a very good job of finding grip again, and the electronics do a very good job. It's no LSD, but it's not bad, and you certainly don't go through there going, oh god, you know, I wish the traction control hadn't kicked in, or I wish I had an LSD. Or it moves, you know, this car really does. It turns in very well. The back end is the only bit that really does suffer. It sort of, yeah, it just feels, I was pushing on a little bit there, and it just feels a bit like it's loaded up and it's just going, right, you know, don't push me too much further. That's as good as I'll give. Put away in third this time, so we're coming into the restricted, so foot on the floor, bit of turbo lag, then the turbo kicks in. So yeah, it feels very sure-footed. This is a nice bit of road, especially for sort of the area that I live in, where the roads are just terrible. This is actually a very nice bit of tarmac. So yeah, it's telling me everything, this car, you know. It's like, I feel very confident in it. Going over the brow there, nice and light. This is quite a sharp left. Wet bit of tarmac there. Over the brow here, a bit light. I don't get out of this car thinking, God, I wish I had more power, or I wish it was a bit more planted, or it fulfills, like, you know, 90% of my pleasure driving this car. I just think it's an awesome bit of kit. I'll always stand by that and think this is such a brilliant bit of kit. Sometimes it takes, you know, I've been using it, I've been so busy the last few weeks, I have only been using this car to sort of get to the shops and buy my dinner, etc. You know, going to see mates or whatever it might be. So I haven't been using it like that. I haven't been using it as a proper weapon. And you do become a bit used to it being an everyday car and think, oh, okay, you know, because you get in the M2 and it's like, and everywhere you go, it's like, come on. Whereas you get in this, and if you use it as a normal car for a while, you forget the potential that it's got until you take it on a road like that. And then you start pushing on, and then you realise, you're like, oh wow, this thing absolutely flies, and it gives you pleasure doing it as well. You know, it's not like an understeery beast. It's not necessarily an oversteery beast either, compared to, say, the M2. It's really not. It's just a very neutral car that gives really good feel, I think. But there's a limit. There's an absolute limit. I know where the limit is in this car. I've had them for a couple of years now, and I'm a reasonably good driver, and there's a limit. Whereas in the M2, you kind of you can reach the limit quickly in the M2. You learn very quickly where it is, but you can push it beyond that limit, and you won't end up in a hedge or in a tree or whatever. You push this thing beyond that limit, and you don't know what's going to happen. You know, you might get around that corner, you might have a bit of fun, you might not. So in fourth, we use the torque this time, so in fourth, over this brow. I'm still in Sport Plus. great bit of road down here. Yeah. Well, that gives me enough enjoyment and adrenaline, that's for sure. It's a fantastic bit of road. So yeah, I mean, this car offers so much for so little. This M135 is such great value that it does make cars like the M2 look expensive. The M2 is not expensive. It's an amazing car for 45 grand, 50 grand. It's an incredible car. It's a race car for the road. You know, everything about it is tuned to perfection. It feels, you know, it comes alive. It's a car you could take to the Nürburgring and drive around it all day long. It's a car that a professional race car driver would jump into and feel very comfortable in, and you know, it would feel like a detuned version of their race car. Like they are, the M2 to me is like a giant go-kart. This car is very similar to that. I think what the M2 has actually done more than anything is just highlight what great value the M135 and the M235 are. And now that you can buy an M140 or an M240, I mean, they are just amazing value cars. But the M2 is always better. It is. It's better in pretty much every respect. It's got, you know, a very unique N55 engine with proper M brakes. It has proper M wheels. It has proper M suspension. It's just set up to be a proper driver's car, whereas this car and the 235 is effectively a hot hatch. This one's it's a 1 Series hatchback that's designed to give you as much fun and performance for, you know, on a budget. They couldn't go all out. They have tweaked the suspension. They've given us better brakes. They've given us a fantastic N55 engine. You don't get the DCT gearbox option in these, but then you do get the ZF8 speed, which in my opinion is actually probably a better all-round gearbox. It doesn't quite give you the savage up and down shifts that the DCT does, but as an everyday proposition, it's a better gearbox. It's a smoother gearbox. It's got another cog. It's more efficient. It's a fantastic gearbox, and especially the later ones. Yeah, I think you can get 85% of the M2 in one of these cars or in one of the 235s. A good way of summarizing is F1 teams, Mercedes-Benz for instance, that have, you know, been winning everything for years now, compared to say Manor Marisha or Lotus or whatever they're called these days, the lower end teams. There's what, 3 or 4 seconds difference on a 2-minute track. That's a tiny percentage, right? Now the difference in budget between those two teams is night and day. It's insane. And making a car perform, or an F1 car perform, once you get it to that sort of Manor Marisha level, it's incredible. You know, it's an F1 car. But then to shave off that extra 3 or 4 seconds, or what, a few percent, couple of percent, it costs millions and millions and millions of pounds. Now that's exactly the same really when you're looking at something like this, which is an amazing car up to a certain point where the M2 then comes into its own. Now it's all the money that's pumped into the M2 that gives it that 10% extra edge on a car like this, or 15% extra edge. You know, the suspension, the materials used within the suspension, the brakes, the wheels, the bigger rubber, the electronics, the DCT M gearbox. All of those things make that car just that little bit better. They don't make it night and day better, they improve it slightly. And it's the same if you went from an M2 to say the Porsche GT3. I mean, wow, you know, my dream car, GT3 RS. But again, you're looking at double the money for a GT3 if you could get one, or triple the money for a GT3 RS if you get one. But actually, realistically, you couldn't get one for what, less than 300 grand. So what's that, like 6 times the money? And again, you know, a GT3 compared to an M2 on a circuit is going to be faster, of course. It's more powerful. It's going to handle slightly better, give you a slightly better grip in the corners and stuff. Get its power down slightly better, especially, you know, the rear engine gives the 911s a lot of grip over the rear wheels. Huge rubber on the back of those things. But again, not night and day faster. It's not necessarily going to be more enjoyable, more fun than the M2, but double the money and you save a tiny percentage of that lap time. So it's hard once you get to something like this, which is such a good sort of benchmark or base car. All of these, you know, the RS3, although people would argue that's up with the M2, which it's not, but the RS3, the Golf R, the Focus RS, or even the Focus ST, all of these sort of, the Golf GTI as well, all of these kind of hot hatches, they all offer so much performance and so much value for money. When compared to like supercars and stuff, they blow them out of the water in terms of value for money. But if you want more performance, you have to start paying a lot of money for it from this point onwards. We need to go and try the M2. We need to get in that car and see what that's all about. Yeah, I haven't driven the M2 for about 2 weeks actually. I've started it a couple of times in the garage. It's just been sitting there. So it'd be interesting to jump in that after driving this for a couple of weeks. Right then guys, we're in the M2. I haven't been in this car for about 2 weeks, so yeah, I'm quite excited to drive it again. Lovely being back in this car. Initial feeling and thoughts just sitting in the car are, I'm definitely sitting a bit lower, a couple of inches lower than I am in my M135. Otherwise, you know, the steering or the seating position, pedal box, everything's identical. You know, the steering wheel, although it's hand stitched or it's got the fancy M stitching on it, effectively the same wheel. Got the paddles on the wheel, but otherwise all the layout and the interior, you know, it's almost identical to my M135. It's got the really nice raw sort of carbon trim finish. This one's got the Harman Kardon sound, which obviously adds the nice little tweeters next to the wing mirrors there. Otherwise, yeah, it's the same place. It's the same. It feels like I'm sitting in effectively the same place. I have no issues with that, as I've said before in previous M2 videos. That doesn't matter to me. I think the M135 is a lovely place to be. It's got one of the best, as most BMWs do, it has one of the best, or some of the best driving positions out there. So, you know, sitting in this, so what if it reminds me of my M135 or even a normal 1 or 2 series, who cares? It's a comfortable place to sit. The seats are amazing. They're a bit more supportive. They're basically identical to my M135 seats, but they've got slightly sort of bigger or exaggerated side bolsters, so they give you a bit more stability in the seat. Otherwise, they're just super comfortable and they do exactly what they need to do. The interior, it's got, you know, the very acclaimed and useful iDrive system in here. I've got everything I need, but you know what, none of this matters to me. When you get in the M2 and you get behind the wheel of this car, it's just the driving, you know, driving this machine, the response and the feedback, the sounds, the handling, everything, you know, that's what dominates this car. Now instantly there's more cabin noise in here because of the bigger wheels and the wider rubber. The ride, even though I'm in comfort, is noticeably stiffer. That you can hear, hopefully you can hear the extra tyre noise, and that actually comes from my M135. My 3-door produces more tyre noise than the 5-door because of the sort of the sealing on the doors, or the, you know, the windowless, the pillarless doors. They let through a bit more noise. So the 5-door M135s are going to be your quietest, then your 3-door, and then obviously you get into this and it's a whole sort of whole nother ball game. But anyway, I'm in drive, full automatic. Gearbox, as I've mentioned before, does a very good job at, you know, being a normal automatic gearbox, it's not as good as the ZF8 speed at being a normal automatic box, but it's still exceptionally good. The gear changes are very fast, and it, you know, it's sitting here at 50 miles an hour. It's in top gear. We're doing about 1500 RPM, so it's perfect. Would help it return very, very good MPG for a car of such performance. A lot of people like loud cars, you know, they buy these, people, you know, I know owners already sticking louder exhaust and stuff on there. That sort of thing doesn't really appeal to me. If you can hear the engine when you're really pushing on, that's perfect. And if it can shut up when you don't want it to be sort of droning through the cabin, that's ideal for me. And that's exactly what this car does, you know. It's next to silent when you're cruising along at 50, 60, 70 in comfort, but you whack it over into Sport Plus, manual, the sound, you know, window up or window down, it's unbelievable, it really is. Instantly, even at super low speed, I can feel that this car is just more planted. It's, you know, it's wider track front and rear, and it feels just very sure-footed. It probably feels a bit out of its depth and lazy and bored at these sort of speeds. Not as playful as, say, as my M135, just because, you know, we're not even scratching the surface in this car at these sort of speeds at sort of 30, 40 miles an hour. But it's ready to go and it's ready to play. And again, a bit like the M135, it's two personalities, you know. It's not as good as being a cruisy, comfortable car as the M135 or 235. Not, it's 90% there, but it is better at being an absolute animal. I'm going to stick it in sport going through here and open the window just so you can hear what I'm talking about. Let's stick it in manual as well. I mean, that's an animal there. Oh, and the overrun and exhaust. And the gear changes are lightning fast. They really are really fast. We'll do second and third. Right, second, third. It's just boom, instant. You can hear the turbo spooling up a lot more in this. You can hear it, so you can hear the engine noise. You can hear the turbo spooling up a lot more. You can also hear at slow speeds, especially when you come up to a stop, you can hear, like you can in all M cars, well, the smaller M cars, not so much the bigger ones because they're more insulated, but you can hear the diffs, you can hear the LSDs sort of winding away as you come to a stop, which I think it just gives you that little bit more sort of, yes, I'm in something, I'm in the business, this thing is the business. Now, not only the track's wider in this car, obviously you got the wider wings, the front and back, so it is a wider car to drive around in. You know, it's not the smallest sort of, it certainly doesn't feel compact and nippy like my M135 does once you start getting in traffic situations or around town and stuff, but it's not a big car by any means, you know, and it's nice and short, so parking stuff's still very easy for it, but yeah, its arse does tend to stick out a little bit. So I'm in drive at the moment. I'm just going to leave it in normal drive, automatic. I'm not going to touch anything. The gearbox will still adapt to your driving, so you know, if you're booting it, even in normal drive, it will start adapting to your driving and putting it in sort of lower gears. But it's got so much torque that it really does, it moves it on quite nicely without having to shift down. And it's great like that, the gearbox. It doesn't panic and go, oh, he's asking for more power, let's change down 1 or 2 cogs. No, it will do that if you really stick your foot down, but you know, half throttle, it will take advantage of that torque, which is great. I love gearboxes that do that, automatic gearboxes that do that. Obviously, most of the time in this sort of car, you'll be in manual anyway. Alright, pull out here. Again, we're in full let's stick it in Sport Plus into manual as well. Let's just come up here, we'll leave a bit of a gap. Yeah, in this car, in the M135, the difference as far as I know between Sports and Sports Plus is Sport Plus activates DTC, which is dynamic traction control, so it gives you a bit more slip. Whereas this, the difference between Sport and Sport Plus, it gives you better throttle response again, it gives you, I think maybe a slightly stiffer ride, gives you a louder exhaust. It just, yeah, it seems to turn everything up to 11, whereas Sports is sort of at 10. Anyway, so we're on the same bit of road that I was testing the M135. It definitely feels, the road feels smaller in this car because the car is wider. Now obviously I can focus more on the steering because I've got an auto box. And that's why I think, as much as I love manuals, I absolutely love manuals, and that's why my M135 is manual. When you're really pushing on, you want to make the most of a road. These auto boxes, yeah, you can go a lot faster, that's for sure. Yeah, come over the brow here, nice. I can really push on the brakes, come in here into second, lovely. Finds grip everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It really does find grip. Where the M135 was struggling out of that right-hander, I thought this would actually get sideways, but it didn't. It just found grip, got on with the job. You know, the dampening's better, the traction's better, the LSD. I mean, I was pushing on a little bit there, but we'll go back to it again and I'll sort of go a little bit quicker. It's hard to get your head around just how capable this car is when you haven't driven it for a while. Same bit of road, we're going to come down here, we're just in a 30 zone, so we're taking it easy. We'll just floor it out of here in a second once we get to the de-restricted. Got a bit of slip there between second and third, but DTC's on, so it allows for a bit of slip, but this car does suffer from that bit. Second to third, it gets a bit of slip, then the DTC kicks in and you lose a bit of power. I don't think the manual would suffer from that. I'm thinking so much about the road, where my braking points are, my steering points. I'm not having to worry about the gearbox. Oh. Leave it in second through here. No slip at all. Come over this brow. The car is light over there, but it just dances slightly. Oh, it's just lovely. And that sound. Sorry, who complains about the sound in this car? The brakes are brilliant. I mean, the brakes, don't get me wrong, the brakes in the M135 and 235 are good as well, but and you're never left wanting more in those cars, but obviously this thing, you're travelling that much faster and the brakes just are so effective. I mean, look at that, that's third gear, it just pulls like a train, and it always changes down as well. I mean, obviously it won't to a certain point, but if it can change down and it will hit the red line, it will do it for you, no problem. So you've got a volume, you've got a scale, 1 to 10. You want your car, an ideal car would be able to do 1 to 10. That would be amazing. 1 being very relaxed, you know, everyday car that will do everything very without any fuss and without any sound and whatever else. And number 10 being something that will literally fry your brains, excite you, give you all the adrenaline you could ever wish for. Now, the M135 and 235s almost do that 1 to 10 very well. I'd say they're sort of 1 to 7.5, 1 to 8 cars. They can do the 1, no problem. They can do the 5, no problem. They can do the 7, no problem. They can just about do the 8. They are happiest between that 1 and 8. The M2, on the other hand, will give you that 10 every day of the week. It's always there. The 10 is there immediately. You can feel that 10 is available. It doesn't do the 1 to sort of 3 as well. It's not as comfortable suspension wise. It's stiffer. It's the DCT gearbox is a bit more jerky than say the ZF8 speed. In terms of practicality compared to my M135, it's not as practical. You know, it's a strict 4-seater. It's a coupe shape, so you haven't got the massive potential of boot. You know, you can't fold down the rear seats and get that huge sort of carnivorous square estate. You know, the M135 is like a baby estate, so you haven't got that. And obviously, you know, you're going to have slightly higher running costs because it's effectively an M engine, and you know, the servicing, the M brakes, the bigger tires. It's an incredible car. It is an absolute animal. It's a machine. It's stunning. It's mind blowing every time you get in it. It surprises you just the same, if not more, when you find its limits, which are easily found, but not in the sense that they're so low that you easily find them. They're in the sense that the car's got so much feeling, like all M cars pretty much always have done. It produces enough performance. It produces definitely good enough sounds to me anyway. I think the sounds in this car are brilliant, and I hope that the camera picks it up. That they never feed that back to you guys. So you just have to take my word for it. I think the M135 sounds fantastic and is certainly loud enough for me. But when you get in this car, the sounds you get are just, they're raw, they sound brilliant, and they certainly don't sound synthesized or fake around the cabin. They just sound great, and they sound great from the outside as well. That standard exhaust is fantastic. I don't really know how to finish it or how to sign it off, but I guess the bottom line is, this car at £50,000 might sound expensive to people because, you know, a lot of people look at it as either a 2 Series, or they look at it as or compare it to the half M cars. When you do that, it does look expensive, but like I said earlier on in my M135, this M2 has further highlighted how good value the M135 and the M235 are. They are such amazing value. 30 odd grand for all that performance is insanity, and you're not going to beat that. So you jumping into this, don't expect to sort of have 50% more performance, because you're not going to get that. I guess to summarize, the M2 and M3 and M4 for that matter are amazing cars that become even more amazing when you really start to push them. The M135 and 235 are amazing cars, but become less amazing as you really start to push them, and I mean really push them. So I guess that's definitely where these M cars shine. This M2 in particular, it shines when you're really pushing on. It shines when you're on the sort of limit and the car's starting to move around. It just feels so comfortable and so happy at that sort of pace. But I hope this test made sense. I hope it kind of answered some of your questions. It's confused me even further, in the sense that, you know, I haven't necessarily come up with a proper verdict, but I guess you get what you're paying for sure. This car is not 50% more, for whatever the price differential is. It's definitely not 35 or 40% better than an M235. But it is noticeably better in pretty much every area. Yeah. Hope I'm making sense. Shit.